Jackson, Tennessee. Greyhound out of Shreveport, get you back to Jackson, Tennessee. You be thinking New Orleans is a place them eyes will never see.
In the early 1950s, Carl and his brothers Jay and Clayton would play around the many bars and clubs of the Jackson, Tennessee area. It's in these honky-tonks that they would test out these new original songs and see what the crowd responded to. And some of these crowd favorites would go on to be recorded at Sun's studio and make rock and roll history. One of those honky-tonks was the El Rancho. In its earlier days, the El Rancho was called the Roadside Inn, and Carl and his brothers would play there often. And there's this odd idea of what the El Rancho was, and a little bit of a mystery surrounding exactly where it was and kind of the value that was placed on it. And nobody can really come to a common ground on where it was, at least not in the past few decades. And to be honest, it's just really been sort of forgotten since it was sold in 1961 until now. We are in Northeast Jackson on Highway 70, the old Nashville highway, at the very spot where the legendary, the infamous El Rancho once stood. And what makes this place so unique, besides the music aspect of it, is that it's always been a bit of a mystery when asking folks where it was located. And it's been said that it was way on down this way more, behind this area here, and even on way back down the other side of the highway there. But I have found property lines and evidence that state that this is where it was, right here. And I believe that it was actually in this area right here. Now, as I mentioned, the reason that it's become sort of a mystery surrounding where exactly the El Rancho was located is because I would get so many different answers when asking about it, especially, here recently. There's not a lot of people around who actually, went to it and saw shows there. It actually hasn't really been the El Rancho since 1961 when it was sold. And that's how I ran across some hard evidence that this is indeed the spot of the El Rancho. And I'll go over that with y'all right now. The first sort of dot that I found in connecting all of this was an article from October 23rd, 1961. And this is the sale of real estate when the owner of the El Rancho, Mrs. Carmania Humphreys, she at one time was married to Truman Jones, so she's also referred to as Carmania Jones, but she was the owner of the El Rancho during this time, and this was the sale of that property. And it's in this article that it states where that property lies. Here's a copy of that. Lying and being in the 6th Civil District of Madison County, Tennessee, beginning at a stake at the intersection of the right-of-way of State Highway number 1, which is U.S. Highway 70, in the center of the Old Jackson to Spring Creek Gravel Road, and runs thence north 20 degrees east with the west margin of said State Highway number 1, 402 feet, more or less, to a point, runs thence in a westerly direction, 182 feet, more or less, to the center of the Old Jackson to Spring Creek Road, runs thence in a southerly direction, with the center of the road 352 feet, more or less, to a point of beginning, on which there is located a frame building known as the El Rancho. So the next thing that I did was actually just do a search through Jackson-Madison County property search. And this is what I came up with. An exact match of the footage. Each side here is the exact same footage in this article from 1961 when the El Rancho was sold. But at one time, this was the area that you would pull into park. It says in Carl's book that it was a little framed building right here that was very close to the highway. And as you can see, we are extremely close to the highway here. Before it was called the El Rancho, it was actually the roadside inn. And I'll show you some aerial footage of when there was still buildings here. And there's another structure over to the side, and I'm not sure if that was something that was part of the El Rancho or if it was when it was the roadside inn. But we're on the corner of the Old Jackson to Spring Creek Gravel Road and Highway 70 on the westbound lane is where you can find this spot. And there's a lot of cool stories. A couple of them I'll share with you real quick. So one story that I find really cool is that Carl would write songs on the spot, like completely finished songs. He might go back and change the words in the studio when recording, but oftentimes he would be on stage, see something happening with the audience, turn around and tell the band what key to get in and to just follow his lead. And this is exactly how such songs as Everyone's Trying to Be My Baby, Let the Jukebox Keep Playing, and Turn Around were written right from the El Rancho stage. How cool is that? And I believe right here in this area of the property is where the El Rancho stood. It was a wooden structure with white asbestos siding, and people would park on both sides of the building and on the street here on the highway. And it says that sometimes, it would be half a mile west and east that they would park along, and it would cause a lot of fuss with the local neighbors. And not being a very big place, it said that it had up to 400 people packed wall to wall at times when Carl and his brothers would play there. But some of his most well-known songs were actually written right here that came to life inside of the El Rancho. So this right here holds a lot of music history, and I hate that it's been torn down. I used to drive by it a lot and never even realized that Carl Perkins wrote so many hits right there.
Man, here you are, London, England, successful tour, met what looks like the hottest group in America, the number one song here in America at that time. You're a lucky man, Carl. I really was. And then when I got to the studio, Ringo said, "Mr. Perkins, you care if I record some of your songs?" I said, You want me to write you some?" He said, "No, I really would like to do, honey, don't." I said, "Man, go at it." And I never forget, he said, "Hey guys, you don't care." He got right on the drum. They didn't make over 2 passes at it till they had it. They went right, they cut Matchbox, they cut George sang Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. Now really try, if you can, to imagine an old broken down alcoholic sitting in a chair in London, England, hearing his old songs that he didn't know anybody knew. And there was a group singing them back. And I listened to the playbacks with George Martin. I shook. My soul shook. I left England with a complete different attitude. These little guys gave me some strength that I needed at that time. I walked around Jackson, Tennessee. I told those people, I said, "I owe you, but I'm gonna pay you, man. I got some songs cut with the Beatles." It was beautiful.
I hope one day, something can be done with this area and have it cleared off and put up some benches or just a landmark, something that we can read, something that tourists, something that fans can come and see and stand right where music history was made.
Well, let me see if old Sticks in tune here. We'll just try a little of that.
How did you, tell us how you come to write it.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm touched by the fact that people like Paul McCartney and the artists of today remember the name Carl Perkins. And I remember very well, Bob, I was sitting out on the patio. It's a beautiful place, this island of Montserrat is, and I was sitting out there alone, trying to get pictured in my old mind exactly how I was going to describe it to Val and the kids when I got home, how pretty it really is and how much of God you can see in that sky at night out there on that beautiful ocean. And I thought, in the morning, country boy, you're going to get choked up when you go to tell him goodbye, so you might ought to write the way you feel right now down, and which I did. And I'll do your verse in the course of it. On the Isle of Montserrat, no, I never shall forget, just a country boy, guitar, and a song. You invited me in, and you treated me like kin. Son, you've given me a reason to go home. My old friend, thanks for inviting me in. My old friend, may this goodbye never mean the end. And if we never meet again, the sight of life in a little while over yonder where it's peace and quiet, my old friend, won't you think about me every now and then? And I'll think about you, my old friend.
That's really great.